Mother is a weird game. I've been streaming a playthrough of the Mother series on Monday nights, and I recently finished the first one on my birthday. I think the journey, starting from a little podunk town all by yourself and ending by singing with a dumb nerd and your girlfriend to an alien, is worth sharing. Upon booting the game up, you're prompted to name these characters you've never seen before with absolutely no context. I already knew Ninten's default name, but not the others, so I looked them up. Anna, Lloyd, and Teddy. Then the narrative is set up.
In the early 1900s, a dark shadow covered a small country town in rural America. At that time, a young married couple vanished mysteriously from their home. The man's name was George. The woman's name was Maria. 2 years later, as suddenly as he left, George returned. He never told anyone where he had been or what he had done, but he began an odd study all by himself. As for Maria, his wife, she never returned. Oh no.
After that, we smash cut to our bedroom. The only thing we can really do is leave the room, and I guess we're being attacked by the lamp. The first fight of the game is against a lamp. We beat the shit out of the lamp and go to our sister's room to recount the harrowing experience when, wouldn't you know it, her lamp starts tweaking out and the lights flicker. We kill lamp number 2 and go check on our other sister, only to see that she's being assaulted by her doll. And honestly, I am fine with destroying this abomination, but unfortunately, we only made it stop moving. The lights stop flickering and everything seems calm. We run downstairs and see our mom freaking out, lamenting about dad being gone. The phone rings and mom is too shell-shocked from some flickering lights to answer it. Naturally, we don't. We go upstairs to see if our sisters are good. One of them tells us to reach inside the doll, and we hesitantly do. There's a music box inside, and the music it plays temporarily warps the world around us. The other sister gives us some juice after calling me out.
Dang, you don't gotta call me out like that.
Finally, we go back downstairs, and despite the fact that the phone stopped ringing, we pick it up, and our dad greets us. He informs us nonchalantly that it was a poltergeist causing all the shenanigans, I guess. He then remembers that his grandfather, our great-grandfather, studied PSI. He tells us we should go in the basement, but he cannot remember where the key is. Then he tells us we're his only hope, for some reason. Not sure why he's suddenly acting dramatic and grandiose, but whatever. He tells us we have to go on an adventure and develop PSI powers. Oh, also, by the way, Ninten is 12 years old. With no clear idea how to find the key, we wander outside, where our dog informs us that we can converse with animals, and then he requests that we check him out. We notice, while the dog is trying to seduce us, that the basement key is on his collar. So we go into the basement and find a couple of things. First is our great-grandfather's diary, which is labeled as great-grandfather's diary for some reason. Second, a plastic baseball bat. Third, some bread. Then, a rat starts saying swear words at us. I think now is a good time to give a little background on just what this game is. Mother 1 is the first entry in the Mother series and probably the least well-known due to being the only one without a character in Smash. I mean, you already know who Ness and Lucas are, but probably not Ninten. Originally released in Japan in 1989, the game received an official English translation, but because the NES was nearing the end of its life, and for a few other reasons I'm not going to get into, the translation was shelved in Nintendo's comically sized vault deep in their basement, never to see the light of day again. Until 25 years later, when it was released for the Wii U Virtual Console as Earthbound Beginnings, and then later it was released in Switch Online's NES library. Now, armed with a plastic bat and a vague order from Dad to go on a little adventure, we leave our house and are immediately jumped by some farmer named Wally. We come across a woman with pink hair having a nervous breakdown because her daughter Pippi is missing. She pleads with us to tell the mayor so he can do something to help. So we start heading to Podunk. And then we're attacked by a hippie. I decided to name the hippie David and make him a recurring character.
Hey David, how are you doing? I'm doing alright, brosif.
He's a goofy guy. Then we're attacked by Wally again, and Wally basically beats us to death with a pitchfork. Luckily, this game has exactly one feature that does not make me want to throw myself out a window. When you die, you don't lose all of your progress after your last save. No, instead, you're just sent back to the last phone that you saved at with full HP and empty PP, which stands for psychic points, and yes, there were a lot of dick jokes during streams because of PP. I mean, hey, Lloyd has 0 PP. Makes sense why he He's so aggressive. We fight our way to Podunk, where we find out that poltergeists have also ravaged the town. But also, all of the animals went berserk and attacked people, and zombies also attacked the town. In other words, things are pretty bad here in Podunk. We find the mayor and tell him about Pippi. He tells us that a child recently entered the cemetery, which is where the zombies came from. Because he's up for re-election and also because he's a huge pussy, he tasks a 12-year-old child with a plastic bat to enter the zombie-filled cemetery to save a little girl, so he can take credit for it to get a couple more points in the polls. Typical. We stop by the department store, some guy gives us a baby chick, and we set off. Our first attempt at entering the cemetery ends very quickly after we're murdered by the first zombie that we encounter. This was a sign for how the entire game will play out. Our second isn't much different. Our third, we encounter gang zombies, so that's pretty cool. We grind for a while, and finally we enter the cemetery. We explore for a bit until we find a little mausoleum. We find Pippi hiding inside a coffin. She gives us the Franklin badge, which I guess is named after Benjamin Franklin for some reason. And then we lead her back to town. After we crawl our way to Pippi's mom, we are directed back to the mayor. The mayor, the benevolent, altruistic saint that he is, tells me that I have fulfilled my civic duty. He condescendingly claps, tells Pippi to tell people that he saved her, gives me $100 and also the key to the zoo for some reason. Of course, this is also the very same zoo wherein animals have gone full ballistic and attacked people. So I guess he wants me dead so no one can know the truth about who saved Pippi. So after saying goodbye to our new friend, we grab the key from the secretary and start aimlessly wandering in search of a zoo. Eventually, we find a sign pointing us in the right direction, and then a pair of escaped gators try to death roll us. We barely cling to life and book it to the gate. A monkey waited, blocking the way. The monkey, however, was only a distraction. As we let our guard down for just a moment, an ape teleports behind us and rips Ninten in half. We try again, and this time we make it to the monkey. It launches a flurry of E's and tears the key from Ninten's small boy hands. Which is fine because the lock was actually broken and we didn't need the stupid key in the first place. We fight through tigers and elephants and other assorted zoo animals. We find an exhibit describing a singing monkey, but the exhibit is empty. Finally, we find the superintendent's office. We kick down the door and a loud buzzing noise takes over the soundtrack. We search every room. On the top floor, we find some kind of small boy-sized pill capsule. The capsule explodes and a Starman Jr. emerges. What is a Starman Jr.? I don't know. I've only played Smash Brothers. After we defeat it, the capsule, now in its pre-exploded state, flashes and floats upward. I assume it phased through the ceiling, but it's also entirely possible that it's just stuck up there like a forgotten birthday balloon. But it turns out that the droning sound from the capsule is what drove the animals into their frenzy. And now that the capsule is not appearing anymore, the droning sound is no more, so the animals are back to normal. Our job at the zoo was completed. We wander once more and we stumble upon Canary Village, which uses the same sprites as the cemetery, which is not at all confusing. An old dude tells us that the chick we picked up earlier is the baby of a canary named Singing Laura. We quickly give up trying to get to Laura to return her baby and just leave. We later find a couple of cops blocking a bridge. They tell us that the curfew has been lifted, whatever that means, and Ninten can now leave the greater Podunk area. The cops also inform us that Ninten has telepathy, and weirdly enough, telepathy cannot actually be used on the cops. Anyway, we continue forth until we find a cave. Deep in the cave rests a big pink conch shell that speaks into Ninten's mind. Using the cops' conveniently timed information, we use telepathy on the conch. It asks, "Who has lost his tail?" Ninten frantically flips through Great-Granddad's diary and reads, "The forgotten one of the ship that sails the cosmos." No clue what any of that is about. Before we can even ponder this weird riddle, we find ourselves teleported to a pastel wonderland. We mosey on into the nearest house, which turns out to be a sort of item storage feature. We drop the canary chick off to clear a spot in the inventory. We find a path leading to a castle. Guards blocking the way will only let us pass if we answer a riddle. Before he tells us what the riddle is, we read his mind and tell him the answer. So we enter the castle then. We quickly learned that Queen Mary, ruler of this place, used to sing a particular song a lot, but she's forgotten the song recently. She can only recall a short part of it. We enter the throne room where Queen Mary waits. She tells us that this strange land is called Magicant, and everyone is our friend here. We can have whatever we want, whenever we want. We tell her that what we want is to hear her song. She tells us that the song is only 8 notes long, which is a lie, and also we need to learn it. Once we do that, she'll be able to sing the song, which I guess makes sense since she forgot it. So a fun little side note here, there are encounters in Magicant when you're not directly in the town or in the castle gates. I died, and whenever you die in Mother 1, you don't actually get a game over, as I said earlier. Instead, you respawn to the last place that you saved, and you can only save at phones. And, there's only, phones in set places. So the last place I saved was a house next to the cemetery, which is south of Podunk, and where we are now is, way north of Podunk. So Ninten's health is maxed out when he dies, but his PP is put to 0, regardless of whatever it was before. Using telepathy doesn't use any PP, but you have to have at least 1 PP to use it. So after dying, I had to walk all the way back to that cave, only to find out that I can't actually get back to Magicant since my PP was empty. So I had to walk all the way back to the hotel in Podunk so that I could pay money to sleep and restore my PP. And then I had to walk all the way back to the cave. And this game is a goddamn headache and I hate it. I actually got so frustrated by this point that I ended the stream before I got back to Magicant. So I actually lost a bit of footage here. But after we get back to Magicant, we wander until we find a bunch of wells. We step on them until we fall down one. There's a maze, but we get through it pretty easy. We find a sword in the largest room of the maze, but Nintendo can't use it. I mean, we keep it anyway because it's a sword. It's pretty cool to just have. And then later, we find a sleeping dragon that we can't do anything with since we are a weak little baby, and it doesn't respect us. Now, at the end of the maze, we find a weirdo. He spouts some existentialist philosophy 101, and we have to talk to him multiple times, and with no other options to get him to move out of the way, we convince him that his worst fears are actually true, and he doesn't exist at all. It works, and he disappears from existence, clearing the way. After walking through the newly opened doorway, we're teleported out of a new big pink conch shell just outside of Marysville. We quickly find the nearest phone, so we don't have to do any of that trekking ever again, and now we enter a period of Mother that I like to call the section where Nintendo suffocates on exhaust fumes endlessly. We die to psycho trucks. A lot. We pay a visit to the local doctor, and he, just listen for yourself.
First, show me your money, then I'll treat you. Well, in your case, I'll have to bill $90 for your treatment. This special price was set just for you. Fine, die all on your own. I'll phone a mortician. Oh my... Dude, what?
After a number of deaths that only God can count to, we find a factory guarded by a starving dog. We show it an ID badge that we found laying on the ground nearby, but it's a smart puppy. We have no choice but to beat it up. We enter the factory, wander, fight a bunch of robots, and also we find a really hot guy.
You trying to tell me this dude's not hot? Look at him. That's a hunk, dude.
Anyway, while exploring, I discovered the rewind feature on the Switch's NES emulator. I realized that Nintendo had bestowed upon me a BS counter to all the BS that Mother had flung at me. I had the power to control time itself. I know what you're thinking, Postrack, that's cheating. And to that I say, shut the hell up. This game hurt me so much, I deserve this. Needless to say, Rewind made the game so much more tolerable, and I feel so incredibly bad for those Japanese kids that played this on their Famicoms. In the factory, we find a room containing a rusty rocket that we can do absolutely nothing with. Broken and defeated, we leave to explore elsewhere. Our attempt at exploration is cut short, however, as everything to the north is blocked by a landslide. So we return to Marysville to regroup. A random lady suggests using a rocket to blow up the landslide. It's just crazy enough to work. So now, we set out looking for a way to use the rocket. We end up at a school since it's the biggest unique building in town. We explore every room and learn that kids are kinda dumb and annoying. The door to the roof is locked, so we try elsewhere until we find a bedroom, I think. The janitor is inside. After talking to him, he quickly pivots the conversation to complain about his wife. He laments to Nintendo, a literal child, about her depression and how it affects his day-to-day. He asks if we think that she's awful too. No, strange old man, I think your wife just has depression. This makes him remember how pretty she looked when she was younger, so maybe she's not that bad after all. This guy sucks. Then I think he hits on Ninten by asking him to come have tea on the roof. He unlocks the roof, but he doesn't even come up to have tea. We check out a trash can, and we meet a kid hiding inside of it. We learn that he's bullied regularly, and he's stolen explosives. He makes us promise not to tell anyone about them. This game was released before 1999, and damn, that bit did not age well. He finally comes out of the can and suggests that we, together, make more explosives. We don't have a choice as he pulls us along. We are now legally an accomplice. We get to the chemistry lab, and our school shooter friend, who is named Lloyd, doesn't have a single clue what he's doing and blows up the lab. Then he joins the party. Yay. Since he's obsessed with explosives, it's probably smart to take him to the rocket. So after some grinding, since while Ninten is level 20 at this point, Lloyd joins at level 1, we go back to the factory. We also learn that the cost of the hotel doubles with Lloyd having joined, so that's pretty cool. We go back to the rocket and Lloyd fires it. We quickly exit and go check out Lloyd's handiwork. Yep, it worked. We follow the train tracks until we reach the station. After talking to the least qualified ticket taker ever, we buy tickets to Spokane. And then this track plays. We get to Spokane and see the streets are covered in salt and there are no people around. After a bunch of fights, we find the hotel. The price is super cheap, but something feels off, so we don't stay. We find a small settlement nearby where all of the townsfolk have moved to. Passerby tells us that the streets of Spokane are filled with monsters, so the people ran away. It makes sense. A random woman gives us a key to a house. And then we talk to this guy.
I am the only clown in Spokane. Everyone else is so serious.
It's not relevant to anything, I just really like it. We find the house and we head inside. An ordinary mouse gives us a clue. We have to find a piano. And then we learn that this house is like super duper haunted. The spirits overpower us and we die. Also, Lloyd dies. Lloyd actually dies. His sprite becomes a transparent angel. Luckily, modern medicine is amazing and the hospital resurrects him. It turns out that whenever a party member dies that's not Ninten, you have to go to the hospital and pay an obscene amount of money to bring them back. Anyway, since we ended up back in Marysville, we decided to take the train to Reindeer this time. At the Reindeer station, an old lady gives us a hat and tells us to give it to a girl in Snowman. It's embroidered with the name Anna, which is what we named one of the characters at the beginning. We explore Reindeer, but it exists literally only so that you can get that hat. At this point, I started my 5th Mother Monday stream. It might not seem like it because I'm cutting out like a lot of stuff, but this game had beaten and overall destroyed me. So I resorted to drinking to get through it. In this portion, every time I got frustrated, I took a shot.
We're at 2. Let me just change this real quick. Add to a 7.
It is built for this exact scenario.
Anyways, I'm going to put this number up to 9.
So we hop on a train and head to Snowman. Almost immediately, a pack of wolves turn Lloyd's body into a chew toy. After some wandering, we find a house with a phone. We use it with the intention of saving, but then this happened.
A phone! Yo, this is huge. This is your dad. Excuse me. I need to see the person playing this game. Yeah? Hello there. Appreciate your kindness to Ninten. He's talking to me. He's talking to me in real life. I'm the boy's dad. Okay, hi. Could you please let me know your name? It's okay. Are you sure that is spelled correctly? Eostwreck? Yeah. Thank you for spending your time with me. I too have urgent things to do, so I'd better go now. Slam. But I needed to save.
We find Anna in a church, and she tells us about a premonition dream she had about Ninten. She then tells Ninten about her missing mom. She says goodbye to her dad. Her dad, much like Ninten's parents, is basically the worst and doesn't give a single damn about sending his daughter into the world to die. Anna joins the party, and she's level 1, so we start grinding again. I very quickly got incredibly frustrated by grinding. Over the course of about 10 minutes, I was 3 shots deep. And about an hour or so into the stream, I was at 5. And then I went on like a half-hour tangent about Larry the Cable Guy and cars. Cars can die? What? You can watch part of that here if you want. Also, here's me drunkenly trying to explain the plot so far to chat.
You are in your bedroom and you get woken up by a poltergeist. Your lamp, your bedside lamp starts attacking you. So you kill those and you go downstairs and your mom is like, oh my god, Nintendo! There is poltergeists everywhere. You leave the house because your mom's like, Nintendo, go save the world. And you're like, there's a lady, right? One of your neighbors. And she's like, oh, my daughter is gone missing. And then you go into town and you find the mayor. And the mayor is like, oh no, everything is going crazy. There's poltergeists everywhere and the animals are all killing everyone. You go to the graveyard because there's a trail of zombies leading there, and you find a crypt where there's a couple of like coffins or sarcophagi. In one of the sarcophagi, you happen to find that little girl that was missing. Oh my god, that's crazy. And you lead her back to her mother, and her mother is like, oh my god, thank you so much, Nintendo, you are so cool and I am grateful for you. And the little girl's like, hey Nintendo, maybe next time. At this point, a miracle happened. A mother expert happened to join chat. He suggested that we go to Magicant to grind because the hospital is free. So we did that. By the time the 3.5-hour stream ended, I had taken 10 shots. I was dead. We spend a good amount of time grinding before heading back to the Spokane haunted house. Now reasonably leveled, we make it to the lowest basement and learn a part of the melody from the piano. Turns out, that music box from before taught us the first part of the melody. We then decide to go to the northeast part of the map. Unfortunately, the train tracks are busted heading in that direction, so we have to proceed through the desert on foot. We make it to Youngtown first. It's populated solely by children. Turns out their parents were abducted by aliens or something, and they're in the mountains. I wanted to leave, but our resident mother expert recommended that I stay in Youngtown for just a little longer. We find a psychic baby who teaches us how to teleport, so that's pretty flippin' cool, honestly. We wander back to the desert and find a guy with an airplane. We ride in that for a while, and during one trip we notice a cactus with a face. The cactus teaches us another melody. Then, after another few rides, the plane guy lets us, a group of small children, borrow his fucking tank. We're treated to this bop as we roll around. We find some ruins and get attacked by a giant robot, but lucky for us, robots are actually allergic to tanks. Unlucky for us, tanks are also allergic to robots, so after less than a minute, we lose the tank. We enter the ruins, which are inhabited by lying monkeys and a penguin who wants to be a monkey. One of the monkeys is a predator. Oh. I'm gonna call the police. We end up finding a cave that leads back to Magicant. While we're in Magicant, we head back to the wells and throw hands with the dragon. A mother expert then informs us that PSI is actually useful and does stuff. So we try, and the dragon ends up looking like a complete chump. The dragon, impressed by our strength, teaches us another melody. So now we head back east and trudge through the swamp. We find a shack where Pippi is just kinda hanging out. Outside in a garbage can we find Lloyd's dad. There are some unfortunate implications with this, but we'll just ignore them for now. Lloyd's dad destroys his own son, and we walk away. We arrive in LA, not to be confused with LA. The first building we see is a music venue, and Plane Guy is blocking the door. He's pissed about his tank, so we hand over $200 so he can repair it, and then we go inside. We're told we need a ticket. Outside, some douchebag tries to scalp a ticket to us for $1,200. We don't have that much on us, so we head to the nearest department store to get money from the ATM. On a whim, we check what's for sale at the store, and lo and behold, they're selling a ticket for only $350. So fuck that scalper, actually. We go back to the club, and it turns out we're the headliner. We perform a whole song and dance, and everybody thinks we're super cool and epic. Not even 2 seconds after our performance, some musclehead storms the stage. He's upset that we beat up his friends, which I actually don't remember doing, but whatever. He challenges Nintendo to a 1v1. After a couple of hits, he relents and decides that we're friends now. He tells us that his parents too were abducted to the mountains.
He kicks Lloyd out of the party and takes his place. Teddy, our final character from the intro, is in our party. He's got monster stats and he starts at level 18, and I love him. With Teddy in tow, we find the Lookout Tower. Peering through the binoculars, we see an island, and then from that island, a goddamn rocket fires off and lands nearby on the roof. So naturally, the party climbs into it, and it flies back to the island. We walk into the only building on the island, a house, and we're greeted by some scientist nerd asking if we've ever had strawberry tofu. We also meet his twin assistants, Abel and Baker. All three of these dweebs request that we buy some strawberry tofu, so we hop back in the rocket and make a quick stop at the department store. The scientist, in exchange for his beloved tofu, gives us words of love. Baker teaches us swear words, and Abel gives us some incredibly useful information that I immediately forgot. We then head back to Magicant to get equipment for the endgame. We take a deep breath, and we begin our journey to Mount Itoi. We begin by traversing a surprisingly easy cave maze. Once we exit, we find ourselves on the mountain, but we have to ascend further via ropes. At this point, there's a ridiculous difficulty spike. Reason being, by the time they got to making Itoi in development, they were so close to their deadline and so tired of working on the game that they just didn't balance or play test it at all. They just did not. So, after abusing Rewind like crazy, we find a house. We enter and an old geezer heals us. We try to explore the rest of the house, but then Teddy gives Ninten and Anna the room. I don't like this part. Ninten and Anna go into the room alone. Anna blocks the door and requests that Ninten stay with her. Shocked and very uncomfortable, we mutter out, "Yes." After a brief awkward silence, Anna asks to dance. So, we watch Ninten and Anna dance. I guess that's just how it was in the 80s, I don't know. Then, Anna asks if Ninten loves her. Dude, I was shocked into silence again, but I said yes because that's what the game is hinting towards is the right answer. If these weren't children, I'd be having a different reaction, but then Teddy bursts in, ruining the mood, and asks why they're blushing, as if he didn't purposely give them the room alone for the express purpose of doing something that would make them blush. God damn, Teddy is kinda dumb. As we begin leaving the room, Teddy stops and asks if we heard a noise. We're then attacked by another giant robot, very similar to the one in the desert. We try fighting it, we do our best, bust out all of our strategies we've learned over the course of the game, abuse Rewind, all to no avail. The robot is too much. It obliterates us. Then something happens. An explosion ends the fight. Slowly sliding onto the screen is a tank. Lloyd steps out. He scoops his fried friends into his arms and then to the tank. We end up inside of a house, and it's only Ninten and Anna. No third party member. And then it hit. The most unexpected gut punch, and I gotta admit, it still hurts to this day. Teddy, trying to protect his friends, suffered a grave injury that leaves him bedridden for the rest of the game. A doctor watches after him. It takes everything in me to not break down and cry. But you're not allowed to cry until the end of Mother. Fi didn't love Teddy. He was so strong and cool. Way stronger and way cooler than Lloyd. But now he's gone. Left the party forever. And then Lloyd, the weakling, steps up and reclaims his spot in the party. The worst part? Teddy kept his equip items. We decide to go do a little final exploration. We come across an old fella who lost his dentures. We find those and return them. He gives us some mouthwash that I throw away later to make inventory space. We pay a visit to Magicant and find a bard who sings the locations of the melodies, which, we're still actually missing half of those despite being at the end of the game. We kind of need those missing melodies. So, based on the bard's song, our first stop is the zoo. Remember that singing monkey? After we beat the Starman in the office, it turned out the singing monkey actually returned to its exhibit. So the monkey teaches us a melody. Second stop, Canary Village. Now before we just kind of gave up trying to get to Laura to return her baby, well, it turns out one of the weird tombstone things is blocking the view of a hole in the fence that leads right to Laura. Because that's just a thing that you would stumble upon the first time you visit there, obviously. Well, anyway, we quickly remember that we dropped the chick off in storage way earlier. So we teleport back to Ninten's house to retrieve the chick from one of his sisters. On our way back to Canary Village, we run into David one last time.
Listen, man. I know I've been a jerk in the past, but like, I've changed, man. David, I don't believe you for half a second. No, I did. I got a haircut last week. Your hair looks exactly the same as when I saw you a month ago. No, I swear, dude, I promise you my hair is cut. I started a garden. David, you're such a liar. You're not even good at it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry about David. I'm sorry. He's a problem. Once we get back to Laura, after making her wait literal months for her baby, we return her. Laura then teaches us another melody. That brings us the 6 total parts of the song. Now we head back to Mount Itoi to begin our final ascent. We fight long, we fight hard, and we make it to the top. Our reward for such a long journey, what waits for us at the top, is a tombstone. A grave. A voice from the grave welcomes us. It tells us that our great-grandmother Maria's love was scattered in the form of 8 melodies. Maria. That's a name I haven't heard in a long time. You remember that narrative setup from the very beginning of the game about a young couple named George and Maria? If you don't, that's fine. I didn't either. But here's a recap. About 80 years ago, a dark shadow covered a small town, and George and Maria vanished. After 2 years, George inexplicably returned. He never told anybody about what happened. He locked himself away and studied something. Maria, however, never returned. But now, we learn that she is the source of the 8 melodies. Maria, Ninten's great-grandmother, is Magicant's Queen Mary. And this grave belongs to Ninten's great-grandfather George. The voice teaches us another melody. But we're still at 7 melodies. This was supposed to be number 8, but we missed one somehow. We begin wandering, hoping to accidentally stumble upon the missing melody. The way forward is blocked by a rock, so we teleport around a couple of places. And then that's when I remembered that very, very, very convenient, informative thing that Abel told us before. So we begin our final ascent of Mount Itoi. After a short bit, we find a path that we didn't travel before. The path leads to a large lake. Then we come across a broken boat, but Lloyd is a big nerd, and he fixes it. We drive around for a second, and then we're sucked into a whirlpool. And that was actually the right thing to do. We're sucked into some kind of underground lab. We wander until we come across my personal favorite character in this entire game, Eve. Eve says that she was waiting specifically for Ninten, and she was made by George. Now, by the time this happened, it had been over 2 months since I started the game, so I completely forgot who George was. And I mean, to be fair, he was literally only ever mentioned once in the first 30 seconds of the game. Anyway, Eve tells us that George was taken to the end of the universe. This is where he and Maria disappeared to. Eve's purpose is to protect Ninten. Just then, the windows in the lab begin cracking, but Eve saves everyone and brings them back to the surface. Then, Eve joins the party. We've got our own giant robot now, and oh my god, she's so strong. I didn't know that this game could show numbers that high. Now, assuming Eve's purpose is to destroy the rock at the top of the mountain, we leave the lake and resume our final ascent. As we make the final round, we're jumped out of nowhere by a third and final giant robot. We try to run, but it doesn't work. The robot deals a massive amount of damage to Eve. I have flashbacks to Teddy. Eve only does double-digit damage. Then, Eve explodes. She sacrificed herself to take out the enemy robot. And there she lie, in broken pieces. It takes everything not to cry. We finally had power. We could finally do something in the bullshit game called Mother, and just like Teddy, the little ray of joy that I found in this torturous hellscape was ripped away from me. And then, Eve's metallic corpse played a melody. The final melody. Eve's death gave me one final sliver of hope. The end of the game.
We could do it now. We could end this for good. And once we reach the end, we can finally cry. Now, armed with all 8 melodies, we teleport to Magicant and storm Mary's, or Maria's rather, throne room. She asks Ninten to recite the melodies, and he does. All 8 of them. This is the song that we sacrificed so much to hear. A song of love. A song of pain. A song of loss. A song of growth. A song of endings. The completed song prompts Maria to remember a name. Gaigyu. Maria raised this Gaigyu like her own child. Gaigyu was always happy, except for when Maria sang this song to him. Maria then calls out for George as the lights dim. She's going to join him. Her purpose was complete. She made sure that Ninten learned the 8 melodies. Magicant begins crumbling, dying, or rather, disappearing. Something that never existed can't die. Maria, now without a kingdom to rule, fades away to see her husband for the first time in 80 years. Maria's lingering regrets caused Magicant's appearance, and now, without those regrets, coming to, we find ourselves back at the peak of Mount Itoi, standing atop George's final resting place. The rock blocking our way is now gone, revealing a deep cave. We enter. The atmosphere changes. The only sound we hear is an ominous drone. We find an opening in the cave and peek inside, only to see countless capsules, each occupied by a human being, the missing adults. One speaks to us, informing Anna that her mother is among them. We must destroy the mothership. We move through the cave and exit the other side, finally at the apex of the world. Slowly, deliberately, threateningly, an alien vessel reveals itself. Our 3 heroes stand firm, and finally, he reveals himself. Gaigyu, the source of all the strange happenings in the world, the source of the dark shadow blanketing the land, the same dark shadow that appeared the day George and Maria were taken to the end of the universe. So now, we face Maria's precious Gaigyu. Once the battle begins, the menu has an 8th option: sing. Trying to defeat Gaigyu through traditional methods would clearly be futile. Then, Gaigyu speaks.
Ninten, I am grateful to your family.
The heroes begin singing, but they're all cut off before they can finish the song. Gaigyu continues his monologue.
Your great-grandparents, George and Maria, raised me.
So I'm not gonna lie, I pushed the rewind feature to its absolute limit during this fight. Like, the only way I was gonna get through it was by manipulating the RNG until things can finally go my way turn by turn. This took an actual real-life hour, just this one fight. We alternate between singing, healing, Gaigyu attacking, and Gaigyu monologuing. Every time the party sings, they get a little further in the song. A few more notes get out. To have a better chance at things, I use Ninten's speed boosting PSI to make the odds of moving before Gaigyu greater. I also boost the party's defense so they can withstand more hits before they need healing. I also realize after a while that keeping 3 characters healed up is impossible. So, since he doesn't have any way to heal, we sack Lloyd so Ninten and Anna can keep each other alive. Also, I learned that there's a limit to how far back you can rewind.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to before I do that. I can't! Are you...
Gaigyu confirms to Ninten that he was raised by Maria and George, but George stole some kind of information from Gaigyu's people and fled back to Earth with it. And now, Gaigyu is ever so slightly conflicted because while Maria holds a special spot in his heart, George betrayed him. And now standing opposed to him is Ninten, their descendant. He offers to spare Ninten, but Ninten's a hero, baby. As they continue the song, Gaigyu grows more angry, more erratic. He demands they stop singing, then pleads, then begs them to stop. Back and forth. Sing and heal, rewind, change the turn order, again and again until finally I ran out of items to regain PP. Anna had to be sacked. Ninten was 1 hit from death with no way to heal any longer. I couldn't rewind. I couldn't reload. If I couldn't finish it here, I couldn't finish at all. I couldn't take it. I would go insane. I had no idea whether the song needed to be sung one more time or 20 more times. Okay, this is it. This is it. Yes! Oh, thank God. Oh, it's finally over. Oh, finally, I could cry. Alright, here's what I really have to say about Mother 1. For the time that the game came out, it did a lot of new things. It broke the mold of what people thought an RPG was. I respect it for that. But I did play this game in the 21st century, and video games have changed a lot since 1989. I'm glad that I played it, but you could not pay me all the money in the world to play it again. A game has never made me feel so frustrated, so consistently upset. The controls are unresponsive, which you wouldn't think would be a problem for a turn-based RPG, but it really is a problem. Everything is behind multiple menus, and if you mispress it all, you have to comb through all of those menus again. Performing simple functions like withdrawing money from the bank requires you to go through like 3 menus, instead of like, I don't know, just being a single button press. Sometimes things want you to talk to them, other times they want you to check them, with no rhyme or reason as to which is appropriate. Grinding is an absolute nightmare. The difficulty spike at Mount Itoi is atrocious. Now, I don't necessarily think it's a bad game. There were definitely parts I enjoyed, and I absolutely respect it for what it did for the gaming scene. It took many, many years, but the effects of this game have been just fantastic, especially in the indie scene. Games like Undertale, games like Doki Doki Literature Club. It had a profound effect on storytelling that didn't find its way back to the mainstream for decades. But it made possible experiences that I've absolutely adored in gaming. Now, there were obviously parts that I enjoyed, and the humor was well-timed, and it was executed well when it appeared. But I also don't think it's a good game. I really think you should only play Mother 1 if you're dead set on playing through all 3 Mother games like me. Anyway, I guess it's time for the second one.
姉ちゃんどうしよう。
俺たちまた。大人も子供もお姉さんも。